The building complex that came into view as the vehicle crested the hill seemed huge to Hope, at least for a school that wasn't a university. But she knew it's just how the Shilvanti built. There were several buildings, but none were more than 3 floors high, twice the height of the equivalent human buildings. But the added ceiling clearance to allow 2-meter plus claustrophobes feel comfortable meant that they were on the huge side for a human. At least the purple was broken up with swaths of black and a slightly faded looking lime. They were accent colors on the honest-to-goodness stone buildings, but the figures wandering across the courtyard were clad in almost nothing else. It seemed to be a school uniform of sorts, or perhaps the colors of whatever noble was in charge of the facility. As she shouldered her bag and got off the bus, Hope could hear an agitated buzz of trying not to sound too excited voices coming from the students. Even though they were hanging back, she could even make out some of the comments.
So tiny.
Goddess, is that
A boy
human?
or a girl?
Her
How
humans
old?
were all boys. Or close.
Stupid. How would they reproduce?
Sinks
Do
are
they
all
litter?
human.
Wait, is that a night crew?
The word was spoken with a venom that Hope didn't understand. Not knowing what a Nikru even was, the question was enough to cause an ominous lull in the speculation, and her stomach clenched in anxiety. Before more could be said, an older Shilvanti woman stepped out from one of the smaller one-story buildings. She looked older than Matrin, her gaze almost sleepy seeming, as opposed to the other woman's piercing glare. She was the oldest looking Shil Hope had ever seen, but that wasn't saying much. She looked younger than Hope's grandfather, with a figure best described as willowy. Hope realized with a start that the new woman was hardly taller than Thato. Tall for a human, petite for a Shilvanti. She leaned lightly on a cane, and wore what looked to be the most expensive outfit Hope had seen in person, if the amount of detail of the golden ornamentation on the shimmering lime cloth was to be believed. It hung a little loosely on the woman, but Hope couldn't tell if it was a fashion choice or not.
Ah, you're back.
The woman said as Matrin parked and exited the vehicle to salute. Her voice was a surprisingly pleasant contralto, without the reedy note Hope was used to hearing from elderly human women.
So, these are our new students.
The new woman asked, unnecessarily as she studied them, then glanced sideways at the ill-concealed curiosity of the Shilvanti students. There were a couple dozen already, and from the sound of things, more were coming.
Do you have your translator handy?
She asked Matrin.
I'd been planning to let you get them settled, but I think we should probably introduce them first, before anyone spontaneously combusts from curiosity.
Her eyes flickered over the humans before they settled on the second tallest, Hope. Matt stepped up before Hope could gather her wits to speak, and she tried not to sigh in audible relief. She hated public speaking in front of humans, to say nothing of Shilvanti. Worse, her grasp of the language wasn't the best, while Matt spoke trade Shil like a native.
It's an honor to meet you,
Matt said to the women in accented high Shil, words a little slow but clear. We have all been studying trade Shil since before we left Earth. We would like permission to not use a translator, so we might practice and better ourselves. Hope kept her back straight and her expression bland enough Matrin didn't glare at her any harder than before, but she found the puppy dog eyes Matt gave the older Shil hilarious. Moreover, it was clearly working. The older woman had looked a bit nonplussed about his grasp of Shil and interrupting a conversation, but the sweet-eyed earnestness from a boy made it hard for her to want to stand on protocol. A faint, indulgent smile crept across her face.
I suppose no better time to get started than the present.
she said, and inclined her head graciously at Matt. Then she glanced around the courtyard and the ever-multiplying students that peered around corners and out of windows. The students started to withdraw upon being acknowledged, but she turned and tapped her cane loudly against the stone beneath her feet.
"Assemble in the courtyard, girls," she called out, voice carrying without shouting. "We'll do some introductions when everyone's here."
The students stopped retreating and advanced with a mixture of expressions on their faces, assembling in disorganized clumps. They stopped even trying to hide using their omnipads both for pictures and to message others. The latter evident as more students continued to arrive, hurried and out of breath. Turning back to the quintet of humans, the older Shilvanti smiled.
"I am Head Administrator Tora Ali Ianzu, Head of House Liornar,"
she said, not waiting for all the students to assemble before she started. Then again, they all knew her and the staff.
"You've met Matrin, of course. In addition to her administrative duties, she also handles hand-to-hand combat instruction."
As she spoke, Tora glanced away for a moment to beckon another Shilvanti woman closer, one dressed more like Matrin than Tora. She towered over both, but looked both younger and more friendly.
"Gultira teaches biology, among other duties,"
Tora said by way of introduction. Gultira bounced on her toes and beamed at the new arrivals, leaning down a little to get closer to eye level. The action flashed some impressive cleavage, but she didn't seem conscious of it.
"Hello. Well, aren't you just the cutest little things? I'm also the on-staff medic, so if you need any help or have any problems, feel free to seek me out,"
she said, a slight frown creasing her forehead.
"How old are you all, anyways?" "All between 8 and 9 Shilvanti standard years old,"
she offered as she ducked her head respectfully, bringing the gap between 14 to 16 in Earth years to the longer years of Shil. It felt weird, but it beat being treated like adults at the worst possible time. Gultira's smile didn't falter, though she still looked full of questions. Before she could ask them, however, Tora once more stepped in and gestured to a woman who had slipped up unnoticed behind the taller teacher. While taller than Thato, the new woman was one of the shorter non-humans present. She was also covered in fine scales that shimmered a greenish silver in the afternoon light.
"Amilis is our mathematics and computer sciences teacher,"
Tora said. A slow smile crossed the face of the scaled woman as she nodded her head in acknowledgement. The expression displayed disconcertingly sharp teeth.
"I suppose I'm the first Helcom most of you have seen?"
Hope couldn't help but nod. The woman was beautiful, if more alien than even the Shilvanti. It was an extra dose of oddness that Hope hadn't been braced for, like stumbling over a top stair she hadn't known was there.
"The Helcom have been a part of the Imperium for centuries, but we don't enlist in the same numbers as Shilvanti, so it's not entirely surprising you haven't encountered any of my sisters on Earth. They're there, but spread quite thin,"
Amilis said as she tucked a lock of bottle green hair behind one ear.
"We also don't run quite so healthy as Shilvanti,"
she added with a sidelong glance that flicked from Gultira's shoes to the top of the taller woman's head.
"So we're most likely to be assigned to support roles."
While Amilis was talking, more of the students had assembled, a few hundred filling the courtyard. They didn't crowd overly close, but the jockeying for position to be able to see the petite new arrivals continued, until Tora tapped her cane against the ground once more.
"All right, girls,"
she announced, her voice ringing off the stones of the courtyard.
"As you can clearly see, we have some new students joining us. A little late for the start of classes, but they've come quite a ways. Yes, They're all from the newest addition to the Imperium, Earth. Yes, they're all human.
The woman's pleasant gaze sharpened as she looked out over the assembled crowd.
I expect you to welcome them to Sarugo and to Shil appropriately. Remember, you represent not merely the Academy, but the Empress herself, in how you comport yourselves towards her newest children.
Hope swallowed nervously. She hadn't heard someone lay down the law that politely since her great-grandfather passed. It was both unnerving and comforting in an odd way. She could almost believe it. Tora turned towards the group of humans and addressed them, still projecting her voice, though at a lower level.
I'm sure you'll learn your new classmates' names in time, but I'd like you to tell us a little bit about yourselves and let everyone know what to call you.
Her voice dropped to be just for the humans as she added,
It will save you having to do it 400 times over the next 2 days.
The 5 humans shared a quick glance, and Matt stepped up first. He started to run his hand through his shaggy dark hair in a nervous gesture, but stopped himself almost immediately, smoothing it over his ears instead.
Hello, it's a pleasure to meet you all. My full name is Matthew Perez, but you can call me Matt. I was offered the opportunity to come here because my mom's working with the new administration of our region on the western coast of North America.
The crowd murmured and shuffled slightly, but was silenced by a glance from Tora and a glare from Matrin.
Hi,
Hope said and offered a small wave to the crowd, who seemed less impressed by her existence than they were by Matt.
I am Hope Klassen. My father worked under governess of different region of same continent of Matt.
The tallest boy stepped up next.
I am Thato Makena. Please call me Thato. My brother works close with governess of South Africa.
The voice was that of the third boy in the group, who leaned briefly against Thato's shoulder and did his best impression of sleeping on his feet before bouncing up on his toes again.
Solem, you're no fun,
he said to the humans who had already introduced themselves, before he turned to the crowd of Shilvanti students.
Hi, my name is Randy. I'm from islands called New Zealand on South Earth. Parents are boring. I want to know about you,
he says with a wide sweep of his arm at the crowd, which murmurs a bit more. A little scandalized, a lot bewildered, but quite unwilling to quash the boy's enthusiasm, especially since it was aimed in their general direction.
We are penned in the ship for weeks. I want sun. I want sport. I want to talk to people. Not these 4. Or Marines not allowed to talk to us. I want...
Hey! He broke off and jumped slightly as the smallest human stepped up from behind him, somehow managing to look up at him and down their nose at the same time.
See, there's much time to know all the faces and play all the sports ever. Lady Tora Isle is correct. The introduction's first, and the introduction's not done.
Turning to the crowd, the last figure bows, light catching off the edge of the dark blue cloth they're wearing.
Please call me Pretty. I am oldest daughter of Rupendir Balakrishan, who is the assistant administration to Governess Elita Semona.
The small girl straightened and turned to Tora, bowing again, but a touch deeper than she did to the crowd.
Do you wish to ask questions of us, Lady Tora Ai?
The crowd had been starting to murmur at Pritri's introduction, but went quiet again, watching Tora closely. The older Shilvanti woman's smile returned, having been a bit surprised with how introductions were handled by the humans. She started to shake her head, then paused.
Most of what I need to know is available to me in files. I am curious, however. What in the sea of souls are you wearing?
Her gaze lingered on Pretty, clearly baffled by the outfit.
It is called a sarai. It is the traditional dress from my region. My mother would be displeased if I were not dressed my best outfit to meet the nobility.
Tora's bafflement eased, a faint amusement in her eyes. She knew she was being flattered, but it was still good to see that these humans, at least, were not quite the disrespectful contrarians her less official sources claimed. Weird little aliens, yes, but at least they're trying. It was more than she could say for some of her Shilvanti students over the years.
I see. Well, the group of you need to get settled in. I won't hold you any longer.
She made a gesture of polite dismissal, releasing the group back to Matrin's care with a nod before she headed back indoors.
Well, I have questions,
Matrin said, not to Tora, but to the humans.
How many of you are girls? Just the two?
The glance raking Pretty was skeptical as she added,
And are you actually 8 years old?
Pretty straightened to her full height and remained the shortest in the courtyard by several centimeters.
Just the two. And no, I am 9 Shilvanti years old,
she said.
16 Earth years. Human women are shorter on the average than men.
She looked pointedly at the other human girl.
Hope is taller than the normal.
Hope's jaw dropped open in mock surprise.
You calling me a freak? I would never say that.
Pretty replied with wide-eyed solemnity before starting to giggle. Hope joined the laughter, some of the accumulated anxiety and tension leaking out of her. The crowd of Shilvanti teenagers had grown a bit louder and more restless with Tora's departure.
Let me help you with your bags.
One of the bolder girls didn't quite ask Randy, looming over him in a fashion she might have thought was seductive. It started a trickle of other enthusiastic girls angling in as well. Matrin's glare stopped them before they could become a wave.
Dismissed. You will talk to them later.
She barked loudly, then turned her eyes on the humans, who sobered immediately.
All right. Let's get you settled into rooms before anything else.